Welcome to today's episode of Rainer on Leadership, your online home for leadership lessons and advice, especially for the local church, although this episode is going to be for a lot of people beyond those leaders in the local church, and you'll know what I'm talking about in just a few moments. I am Thom Rainer, and I'm joined as always by Sam Rainer, and in the production area is Amy Jordan and Akeem Abdul-Morella, and we welcome you to this, and I think Amy told me, the 727th episode of Rainer on Leadership.
It sounds like lottery numbers.
No, it sounds like an airplane.
Oh, yeah. Even better. My analogy is probably worse than yours on that one.
Well, I don't think lottery numbers, Sam. I just think we're flying high. Okay. If you're watching on YouTube, you also see Michael Gillen, who will introduce formally in just a moment. Incredible man, incredible background, and we'll be talking more about him, his ministry, and his latest book. But we'll get to that in just a moment. Hey, Sam, before I get to talking about Tyndale, I want to do one of those little church answers moments. So, church answers moment. You and I are going to go back to Galveston Island. 2 weeks ago?
Yes.
So you and I were speaking at Galveston Island, and someone came up to us, and they started talking about building this huge worship center. You remember that?
I do.
And I got some data from him, and I said, now go give the same data. I'm going to give you my response. Now go give the same data to Sam and see what his answer is. And ultimately, he was asking us the question, if I build a new worship center, how big should it be? And he was thinking 1,000, 2,000, something like that. And we both came up with the same number. Do you remember what it was?
400?
400, yes. Well, we sent him on to Brown Church Development Group. And so he's now working with them,
that's
presumably.
Great.
So
he's in the right place.
Yes, he is in the right place. So I wanted to just give that church answers moment for just a moment to talk about that particular example.
Well, they're one of our partners.
Yes, yes, they are. We'll get Amy to put that in the show notes for us. But
if you're thinking facility questions, renovation or new build, or really anything involving facilities, Brown Church Development Group. Solid.
Nebraska. Yes, Kearney, Nebraska. Hey, I do want to thank our sponsor, Tyndale. We are featuring the 1-year Pray for the Persecuted Bible. And when you get this Bible, you'll read through the whole Bible in 1 year. And you'll also going to be praying daily for believers around the world who are suffering because of their faith. It provides you the structure to help you read God's life-changing word in the very trusted, my favorite translation, the New Living Translation, in just 15 minutes a day. It includes daily prayer prompts to help you intercede for people who are persecuted because of their faith in Jesus Christ. It has full color design pages that feature the stories of the persecuted Christians who boldly witnessed for Christ amid great risk and adversity. The 1-year Pray for the Persecuted Bible will help you apply the principles of God's unchanging word to the effective prayer. Learn more at the1yearbible.com. Okay, Sam, this is going to be fun. We're going to be talking to Dr. Michael Gillen, sometimes called Dr. G, sometimes called Dr. Gillen, and sometimes just called to be a part of God's work. All the time of that. So, Sam, please give that introduction because we're delighted to have him.
Yeah, we're grateful to have you on the show. Dr. Michael Gillen is a graduate of UCLA and Cornell University, holds degrees in physics, math, and astronomy. That's impressive. He's the former science editor for ABC News. He was also the physics instructor at Harvard for 8 years, host of the History Channel series Where Did It Come From?, and producer of the award-winning family movie Little Red Wagon, which is currently on Amazon Prime. He hosts the weekly podcast Science Plus God, or Science and God with Dr. G, sponsored by K-Love and Air One Radio Networks. Runs a film and television production company and shares the stage with best-selling author Rice Brooks at speaking engagements on college campuses worldwide. So one of the things that we want you to check out is his new book with Tyndale titled Believing is Seeing. A Physicist Explains How Science Shattered His Atheism and Revealed the Necessity of Faith. So great book. Go check it out. Welcome to the show, Dr. G.
Well, Sam and Thom, I can tell you, and Amy, I can tell you just how thrilled I am to be with you. I have so much respect for what y'all have done over the years, and for me to be here, life just doesn't get any better than that.
Now, if I recalled, Dr. Gillen, you said that you were in the Dallas-Fort Worth area as we're recording this.
Yeah.
And that's your new home?
Yes, we've been living here now for a little over 2 years. We moved from Nashville. We love Nashville. Made some really great friends there, lasting friends, especially Franklin. And in fact, I've written a Christmas novel, and it's set in Murfreesboro, right
Wow.
alongside Nashville. Yeah, because I mean, it was just a great place to live. So, but yeah, we love Dallas Fort Worth. I came here when I was a boy. I was born and reared in East Los Angeles, and got to visit my granddaddy down in southern Texas on summers. And boy, it was a magical time. Learned how to ride a horse, milk a goat. And for me, after all these decades, for me to be able to come back here, it's pretty deep. I love it here. I love it here.
Well, we want to get to some of the questions, particularly regarding your book. We're excited about the book for a number of reasons, and the audience just needs to go get it. We got the show notes, we got the link to where you can purchase the book, but you really need to be jumping on this book as quickly as possible. But I simply want to say that we hope at Church Answers that at some point in the near future, we can use this book as a regular part of our training for laity and for church leaders. So I know that we've had discussion about that, and we'll see where it goes. But I really hope it happens, because this is an incredible work, and a lot of people need to be reading it. And so we hope it spreads in that way as well. Dr. G.
Well, to God alone be the glory. As Sam indicated, I will often at times share the stage with Dr. Rice Brooks, who I met when I was in Nashville. He's become a very good brother of mine. And he was the one who urged me to write this book. He heard me speaking about faith on campuses, and he said, Michael, you need to write a book about that. And I said, yeah, Rice, but I've got so much going on. I kind of put him off, but Rice is persistent. And he kept pestering me, and finally I kind of gave in, and I'm glad I did, Thom, and thank you for saying those things. And I do hope we're able to work together in the near future. I think it is an important one, possibly one of the most important books I've ever written, maybe the most important book I've ever read. And, when you get to be my age, you're pretty stingy about how you spend your time, because your time is limited. I'm in the fourth quarter of life, and I want to make every minute count for the kingdom and for the Lord. And I just so grateful to Rice and then to Tyndale for publishing it. And my gosh, the reaction, Thom and Sam, have been amazing. It was right out, even before it came out, it went straight to #1 on Amazon bestseller. #1 in a bunch of categories, including Christian apologetics, cosmology, science and religion. And my wife just recently checked. I've been too busy to check myself, but she said I'm still in the top 5. And it's after 2 or 3 months. And so I know that people are buying this for people in Christmas. I had one lady said she bought 5 copies. So for me, I'm just an instrument. I don't really feel, it's strange to say, but I think you being brothers in Christ will understand what I'm saying, is it's not about me. It's about the Lord. He wrote this book. I'm just the guy's name on the cover, but I'm just thrilled to death that it's resonating with people.
Absolutely.
Well, here's why I like this book. I have a daughter. My oldest daughter is 11, and she's very much into the sciences. Mm-hmm. And every day she wants to be a geologist, a conservationist. She loves the outdoors, anything involving outdoors and the sciences outdoors. And this book is a very important book, because we're raising up the next generation, and it's not that science and faith are enemies. They're not. And what would you say to somebody like my daughter, and to anybody who's struggling with the compatibility of science and religion?
My first of all, I'm thrilled that your daughter is into that, Sam. I want to encourage her, because number one, we need more Christians in science, and number two, certainly more women. But I would say to her, don't listen to the loudest voices in the room. I was at ABC News for 14 years, and I remember I did Nightline, I did 2020, but especially Nightline, where the format was typically I would do like an 8-minute setup piece, and then Ted Koppel, who was our host, would do a Q&A with two guests. And I can't tell you how many times we would sit around the newsroom deciding who were going to be those 2 guests. And invariably, we would pick, and not, I say we, I was overruled. There were people, many more people in the newsroom than I, but invariably the show would go with the two loudest voices, the two most extreme voices. And unfortunately, today, that's what's given people the impression that science and religion are at odds. They're not. So the issue is that the people who get the most attention from the media are the scientists who claim that Christianity is anti-science, and then from Christians who claim, the loudmouth Christians who claim that science is anti-Christian, and it's not true. Part of my book is trying to set the record straight, and I think your daughter being 11 years old, Sam, I think she could read. She could read part of that book at least. I mean, I know some of the stuff gets kind of deep, but she could.
That's my granddaughter. She can read anything. She's brilliant. She's beautiful. She's the best ever. She's incredible. Hi, Maggie. Love you.
You have quite the credentials from the academy, and so you'll understand. She's 11 years old in 6th grade, and she's reading 500 to 1,000 pages a week. So she is absorbing she's into all this stuff. And so I absolutely believe that she could read your book. It excites me as a dad. So I just want to say thank you, just from a father perspective who has a daughter who's really interested in all of this stuff. And I would encourage our listeners, if you have children who are kind of into the sciences, this is a great book to pick up to help answer some questions that you may have.
Okay, I'm going to order 11 books, and I'm going to get it for each of my grandchildren. And some of them are not ready to read it. Dominic, your youngest, probably not, and Joel and Brian, maybe not, but I'm going to have it ready for them. Red is going to have Christmas with Dr. Gillen at my house, okay?
And Thom, God bless you for that. And if you send it to us, I'll make sure I can personalize each copy. It'd be my honor to do that. And I'll tell you something. We just about 3 weeks ago, I was at Coastal Carolina University. I'd never been there before, but it's in Conway, South Carolina, close to Myrtle Beach. And I'd been invited there to speak solo, just myself, based on the content of this book. So I expected a lot of college kids, and we got a lot of college kids. But we also got parents and grandparents and high school and middle school aged kids. And that just blew me away. And obviously it made me feel so good. But you're absolutely right that kids today, especially because of the internet and their access to information, they can read this kind of book and they can benefit it, because they will not then buy into the Kool-Aid that tells them science and religion are at odds. They are not. In fact, they are incredibly powerful allies, and I am walking, talking proof of that.
Wow. Well, Dr. Gillen, do some scientists, do any scientists, even atheist scientists, rely on faith? And how so, if they rely on faith?
Yes, Thom, and that's one of the things that I explain in the book. I have a chapter on having faith in science, having faith in math, having faith in astronomy, because I'm trying to get, and it's a double entendre. The title is a double entendre. It's because I explain exactly how all these hard sciences depend on faith. You see, let's just begin with the scientific method. I mean, the scientific method is something all of us in science take for granted. We accept it on faith that it's going to lead us to truth. I can't prove that to you. It's just something that I have to accept on faith. So let's start there. But there are many other ways in which scientists, physicists, astronomers, biologists, geologists, all depend on faith. The bottom line is that whatever worldview you have, whether it's a scientific one or a non-scientific one, it ultimately is founded on what I call axiomatic beliefs. Beliefs that are about things that you cannot see, prove, or even imagine. Even math is based on faith. If you stop to think about it, any logical argument always begins with axioms. Euclid began with 35 axioms when he was out to prove Euclidean geometry. These were 35 things, articles of faith, things that he had to accept on faith that he could never, ever prove. And so, yes, absolutely, Thom. The sciences, whether they recognize, a scientist recognizes it or wants to admit it or not, is solidly based on faith. There's no avoiding faith. Faith is the common denominator that we all share in. And that's what I try to get across in the book. And that's why I say in the book at the end, and it's not hyperbole and it's not a figure of speech. Truly, as I explain in the book, when I take a deep dive in faith, faith is the mightiest power in the universe, because everything we know about the universe begins with certain assumptions that we have to take on faith. Pull out that faith, and it's like pulling out the foundation of a skyscraper. It will all come tumbling down.
Wow.
Great stuff. And one of the things that I want to do is raise my daughter, who is into the sciences, to be strong in her thinking, strong in her faith, and strong in the sciences. So what I think sometimes people might dismiss faith as a weakness.
Yes.
And there have been some throughout history who have pointed to faith as a weakness. What would you say to that? Who claims to not rely on faith whatsoever?
People who don't know better. People who do know better but don't want to admit it because it's somehow a conceit of theirs that they can go through life without faith, but it's absolutely untrue, as I explain in the book in detail. But Sam, you're asking a very profound question, and in this book, I wanted to look at faith very, very carefully and deeply. So let's start with what we mean by faith. Faith is believing in something that you cannot see, you cannot prove, or you can't even imagine. For example, a mathematical point. That's not something I can see, because by definition, by Euclid's own definition, a mathematical point is something that has no dimensions. Well, if it has no dimensions, you can't see it. You can't prove that it exists because it's really nothing and something at the same time. How do you prove the existence of something? We can approximate a mathematical point with a sharp pencil. You put a point on a piece of paper and you say that's a point. No, it isn't. It's a crude approximation of a true mathematical point which has no dimensions. And then you can't even imagine a mathematical point. I dare you to imagine something that has no dimensions and yet has some substance to it. I mean, it sounds like a contradiction. So faith, we have to agree, is believing in things that you cannot see, prove, or imagine. Faith comes in two varieties, as I explain in the book. It's misguided faith and enlightened faith. Misguided faith means that you're placing your belief in things you can't see, prove, or imagine that really don't exist, like the tooth fairy, right? I mean, you can have faith in the tooth fairy. You can't see the tooth fairy. You can't prove the tooth fairy exists, and you can't even imagine what the tooth fairy looks like. That's an example of misguided faith. Faith is a very powerful thing. You can misuse it, okay? But enlightened faith is based on what I call a supercognitive ability that we humans alone have. And I trace it back in the book to our godly spirit, because we are the only species on earth that has God's spirit. And it's the root of what I call spiritual intelligence. And spiritual intelligence is what gives us this cognitive superpower that enables us to sense the existence of things that we can't see, prove, or imagine. And if we place our faith on those things, then we have enlightened faith. And the goal in life should be to build your life on a worldview that is based on enlightened faith, not misguided faith. And so this whole book is trying to explain to people what that means exactly, and where does Christianity fit into that? Where does science fit into that? And so for me, when people talk about faith, they tend not to think about it that deeply. They say, well, I believe in something. No, it's much deeper than that. But faith is unavoidable. The only question is, you'll often hear people say, well, are you a person of faith, brother? Are you a person of faith, sister? Well, that's not the question to answer. We are all people of faith. Every single human being who's ever lived on planet Earth and whoever will live on planet Earth are people of faith. The only question is your faith misguided or is it enlightened? And when I started off life as an atheist, I thought that the Christian worldview was based on misguided faith. But over the decades, when I started exploring that in other religions, I came to the conclusion, and I share that in the book, that no, Christianity is based on enlightened faith. It is based on our perception, our super perception of realities and truths that we cannot see, prove, or imagine, like God, like Jesus, like the whole notion of salvation, that is nevertheless enlightened faith. And if you build your worldview on that solid foundation of enlightened faith, then you have a healthy worldview that will see you through every trouble in your life and see you through into eternity.
We're talking to Michael Gillen, and we're talking about his newly released book, Believing is Seeing. A Physicist explains how science shattered his atheism and revealed the necessity of faith. Michael, it has been a joy to have you here in the short time that Sam and Amy and I have had to meet you. We feel like you are a friend already, and I would appreciate you kind of wrapping this up with, I think, what would be a good summary. Just take a couple of minutes and say, just let us know, what is your hope for anyone who reads this book?
My hope is this, and thank you for the opportunity. I'll just say right now, Thom and Sam, for this opportunity to talk to you all. We live in a day and age of misinformation. You know, I grew up in the space age, but I have a 22-year-old son right now who's growing up in the misinformation age. And these kids, I see it in campuses everywhere, don't know who or what to trust. And their worldviews, by and large, are based on the notion that truth is relative, and that somehow they build a worldview based on feelings and opinions and personal experiences. And I'm here to tell you all, whether you are a Christian or a non-Christian, read this book. If you're a Christian, you're going to find enormous validation for your faith, enormous validation. You're going to feel so good about your faith when you're done reading this book. And if you're a non-Christian, you're going to be challenged. You're going to be challenged to put your worldview on that hydraulic lift like you put a car and look under it. What makes your worldview tick? Is it based just on feelings and opinions and personal experiences? Or is it based on absolute truth, the absolute truths of the physical and spiritual universe? And my hope is that you will look ahead to 2022, or coming to the end of 2021, during this Christmas season. This is the perfect time to take a hard look at your worldview so you can be sure that you charge into 2022 with a healthy worldview based on absolute truth. That's my hope for you today.
Thank you, Dr. G. The book, again, is Believing is Seeing. You can go pick it up at Tyndale.com. Also want to thank our sponsor, Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary. They are committed to helping you get the training you need to pursue your ministry from anywhere around the world. And that's why we are waiving the application fee to any of our programs, any of the programs that they have for all of you Church Answers listeners. So use the code Church Answers. That's together. Church Answers is not two separate words, and it's plural. When you check out, and they'll waive the application fee. So no matter what stage of life's journey you find yourself in, they want to help you. Southeastern wants to help you take your next step in getting equipped to disciple and teach others. So when you go to Southeastern, and you know you want to, you'll find a seminary that isn't just about theological education, but also ministry preparation. Go check them out at sebts.edu, Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary. And thank you, listeners, for joining us again today here on Rainer on Leadership. Be sure to watch on YouTube, subscribe on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or in your favorite podcasting app, and join us online at churchanswers.com, where we are growing healthy churches together.